Hey, it's John, small time bookseller here with another video. Coming at you, going to talk to you about some books that I have sold on eBay and some not books that I've sold on eBay as well. And I'm going to be doing all that talking from here in a new location. We'll see how it goes. I'm actually at my parents' little place. This is next door. It's like built onto our house, you know, and they're not here. You can't stop me, Mom and Dad. You gotta let me live my life. So I'm trying this out. It's, you know, I think it's working out pretty good so far. And anyways, hey, besides the books that I'm going to talk about that sold, I'm also going to talk about one that I found. You're going to want to stick around for that because I think preliminary research shows it's going to be possibly the most valuable book I've ever found. And so, yeah, we'll see, you know. Well, hopefully, I'll show it to you, but I'm pretty sure it'll be up there for sure. If not the most valuable, definitely going to be up there, but it's a fun find. So stick around for that if you don't mind, or just skip through all the sales and look at what it was and go tell all your friends. So today we're going to be going through March 11th through the 20th. So I did the first week of March when I was actually in Japan. If you haven't seen that video, that was kind of fun. I just took the camera, walked around the streets of Osaka, Japan, and then I talked about the books I sold while I was doing that. So that was fun. But we got back from Japan, and I was gone for about 3 weeks. So I put the store on vacation hold or time away mode, and eBay lets you, if it's up to 15 days, you can have people still buy books. Like message will come up that says the buyer is away until whatever date, but they can still purchase books. If it was more than 15 days, they're not allowed to purchase books. So what I did when I first left, I put it on vacation mode so people could see the books, but they weren't able to purchase. And then when I got to be about 10 days left in the vacation, then I went and I switched it from the one where they can't buy it to the time away where they can, where the 15 days. And so by the time I got back here, I had, I think, 15 sales over the time that I was gone. So that was kind of nice. And I had a wonderful time. I absolutely loved it. And but now I did the video that I did in Japan, covered March 1st through the 10th. And I'm going to do this one's going to cover March 11th through the 20th. And immediately after I do this one, I'm switching hats, same shirt. I'm going to do March 21st through the 31st. 30 sales in this video, 36 I think in the next. So I didn't want to do a video with 66 sales. Even though I did that February one with a lot, but March was a bit much. So, which is good because that means it was a good month and there's a lot of interesting things that sold. So yeah, we're going to get into it. First things first, you like the hat? You like the hat? I don't have any idea what it is, but it's got that. It's got like the little Weeblo. I always associate that with the Weeblos. Could be the New Orleans Saints. Could just be a Louisiana, little fleur de lis. Is that what that's called? Oh, and actually I just now realized on the brim of the hat, it says Sam Houston Area Council. So, but I think it looks pretty cool, you know? If you would like this hat, I'm going to list it after I put up the video on my eBay channel. There's a link in the description somewhere down there. And if you tell me that you're a listener, a viewer, a watcher, a person who knows things, it's yours for $5. No matter what astronomically ridiculous price I put on this hat when I list it, yours for $5 if you want it. So I think we're going to get into it. So again, this is 30 sales in the middle through the Ides of March. Actually, it's 11th through the 20th of March. And yeah, we'll get into it. So let's start it off. Starting off with this, I sold this Great Courses of Human Language, sold for $6.50. There are a lot of Great Courses DVDs, and some come with books. I don't know if they all come with books or not, but if you have the book, it's even better. Some of them will sell for $6.50, and some will sell for significantly more. The ones that I have sold for significantly more were the ones on learning Hebrew, learning Greek. They sell for quite a bit. But I've also sold ones on wine collecting or something along those lines. So they will sell. They're slow sellers, but if you see a bunch of them, you get them cheap enough, definitely pick up the great courses. Sold a Q-Link. I'm not going to go through the Q-Link, but I did sell one of those. That's a SIM card. And then we have our first religious book. Religion always sells. And so that's the first one. It's called Defending the Faith Against Present Heresies. And that sold for $9. And our very next book is another religious book. So Women of the Bible, the Victorious, the Victims, the Virtuous, and the Vicious, sold for $10 as well. So right off the bat, we know religious books are great sellers. So always look those up. Bibles, as well as commentaries, as well as dictionaries, as well as anything related to religion, of any religion, always worth checking up, seeing if it's worth anything. The next one is Watchmen Deluxe Edition. This one did not have the dust jacket. It would have sold for a little bit more if it did, but it still sold for $10. And then we had a teaching Spanish book, The Essential Handbook. It's a paperback, sold for $10 as well. Real quick, let me interject for those of you who don't know or are new here. Hello! And I get my books at the Goodwill bins primarily. And the ones in Houston where I go up to are 2 for $1. So the majority of these books I am paying 50 cents for. If they've sat on my shelf for quite a while, I may have gotten them back when they were 3 for $1. But, roughly 50 cents a piece is what I'm paying for the majority of the books, and records and DVDs and things like that. They're all considered media, so everything that's media, movies, are 2 for $1. Where am I? Okay. I sold another Dansk salad plate for $10. I have a lot of dishes out there that need to start selling. The Dansk ones have done pretty well, but I've got some other ones that I'm hoping will start moving pretty soon. Then we had High Impact Instruction, a Framework for Great Teaching by Jim Knight. I love Jim Knight. When I was in the classroom, which I'll be going back to the classroom, but when I was in the classroom, I read a lot of Jim Knight books. So I recommend him if any of you guys are going to be teaching like high school English. Look up Jim Knight. A record sold. This record is Dr. Demento, the Greatest Novelty Records of All Time, Volume 4, the 1970s, sold for $12. I grew up on Dr. Demento. Sunday nights, 9 o'clock, is when it would play, and I'd fall asleep with my radio under my pillow, or my little clock radio playing Dr. Demento, and I just, that was me. That was me growing up as Dr. Demento. So it was fun to find the record, listen to it a little bit, and then be able to sell that for $12. So let me know if you guys were Dr. Demento fans or not. Transforming the Living Legacy of Trauma, a workbook for survivors and therapists, sold for $12. Another genre that sells a lot, which is kind of sad that it has that much need, is books on trauma, especially relating to children working through trauma, treating trauma. Those books will often sell. So if you see anything on that in that genre, I definitely worth looking up. Then I sold a hat. This is a Ron Paul Y'all. It's a pink trucker cap. Sold for $15. Ron Paul was a presidential candidate back in, mid 80s or so. And he's from Lake Jackson. Lake Jackson. And he's from there, so we see a lot of Ron Paul things around here. I had an autographed book of his that I sold that I found at a thrift store. Found this in a thrift store. And so he's a local guy. And so, find that kind of stuff around here. So it was kind of fun to sell that, the vintage Ron Paul Y'all trucker cap. Then we had Locke's essay concerning human understanding from 1964. Nice vintage classic book there on $15. More graphic 45 sold. So if you see these graphic 45 things, they really sell quickly. This was journaling and ephemera cards, and they were brand new, sold for $15. And here's one, sold a step-by-step guide to addition and subtraction on the Chinese abacus for kids. Sold for $15 as well. So, you know, hey, gotta learn how to use an abacus. Another religious book, Matthew Henry's Commentary on the whole Bible. Not just the parts you want to study, but the whole thing. Completed and unabridged, $15 on that. And then I had another one of my last few remaining military aircraft books, The Squadron Signal on the EA-6B Prowler, volume 46, sold for $15. Another vintage Elements of Radio Servicing by William Marcus and Alex Levy, 1955 edition, sold for $20. That's another good genre to always be looking at. Anything from the 50s and 60s related to electronics, automotive, medical. A lot of times they have really neat illustrations inside, so it may not be information, although it could be if you're working on older, you know, what was this one? Radios. But I think a lot of times it's the images that people want out of there. So always look those up. Anything from the 50s and 60s, nonfiction stuff is usually pretty good. Then we had Tales of Tortola and the British Virgin Islands from 1966. I have 66 and 79. I don't know what that means, but anyways, it sold for $20. That's one of those you pick up. It's just a thin little book, and you're like, should I even bother? And I bothered, and I'm glad I did because it sold pretty quickly for $20, but not one that I expected to have any value. Here's another. I had a lot of vintage books, as you can tell. So Esquire's First Sports Reader from 1945, the first printing of that, sold for $20. And then in 1911 through 1915, Tales of Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, sold for $22.50. So I'm getting a lot of vintage sales, right? And I think I've pointed this out before, but when I'm at the Goodwill bins, very rarely, if ever, am I there without other booksellers being there. And all of the other booksellers that I run into are Amazon sellers, and they are just scanning barcodes. And so a few of them take the time and will look up individual titles, but no, the majority of them are not. So often, if I'm, not there when the bins come out, all the barcodes have been scanned, and anything worth anything has already been taken. But all the books without barcodes, which is anything before early 70s, whenever barcodes started, is still sitting there. And so I'll find a lot of these vintage books that sell. And so I recommend for anyone out there, if you are an Amazon seller primarily, once you scan through and scan everything, go back and start looking up some of those vintage books, and you'll probably be surprised at how many do sell. But a lot of people just don't want to take the time to do that, and I totally understand that. All right, the next one, TDCAA, Investigation and Prosecution of Child Sexual Abuse, a 2020 edition, sold for $25. So a book like that, I'm not sure, like that one's 4 years old and it's still sold. So is there an updated version? Sometimes books don't get updated every year. So there may be the 2020 5th edition might be the most recent, or the most recent might be $200. And so just because a book is not a nonfiction book, like a resource book like this is not new, it doesn't mean it's not going to have any value. Now, a lot of times, if it's a textbook for a college textbook and it's a few years old, no one's using it anymore, they're not going to have much value. But some resource books like this obviously still had value, and it's over $25. So take the time to look things up like that. Then we had the 1967 Marine Corps Recruit Depot School Yearbook from San Diego, California, Platoon 1042. It's over $25. And then in 1973, first edition of Takamiyama World of Sumo Wrestling, so over $25. I saw some sumo wrestling when I was in Japan, in Osaka. Not current professional sumo wrestlers, because I think they only have competitions later in the year. These were retired sumo wrestlers who do this just purely for entertainment. But was it ever entertainment? We were just like 5 feet from the sumo wrestlers. They did a great show, some real serious competition, but they did like a show beforehand kind of explaining sumo and the history of it and all that. But then when they got into the actual match, it was legit. And it was really fun that we got to see some sumo wrestling in Japan. So then we have Bushmasters, America's Jungle Warriors of World War II from 1987, so for $30. And then there's I thought it was a complete set of seasons 1 through 11 of MASH that I picked up from a local library. When I got home, I realized that one of the seasons was missing. And so I did what I've done before. I went online and purchased the missing DVD for a few dollars. And then I had the complete series and sold the whole thing for $35. So I've done that before where, you know, if one book out of the series is missing, just buy it. And then you have the whole thing and it's much more likely to sell. The next one, these sat around for a long time because I got these back when the bin drop was still open in Lake Jackson, and that was been years ago. So there are 2 Baofeng professional FM business transceiver portable 2-way radios, and they did sell for $50, but I had them sitting on the top shelf behind the TV for a long time. All right, we got 4 more books. We have Reservoir Geomechanics, Cambridge University Press, sold for $50. I always look up geology books, and there's a lot of them, and there's a lot of times they have value, so they're definitely worth looking up. And then the next one is Rip Kirby, First Modern Detective Comic Strip from 1946 to 48, sold for $90. This one sold for $90, and I have in the description to see the pictures because inside the front cover, it was obviously given to someone as a gift, and everyone in the office signed it. So it had lots of signatures and good luck, and we wish you well, gonna miss you, that kind of thing. And it still sold for $90. So if you get that one without all the inscriptions, I could probably gotten significantly more. Maybe not significantly more, but at least another $10 to $20, I would think. Then this is a cool book, The Savage World, A Complete Natural History. It had no date on it anywhere, but it was old, as you can see from the picture there. This sold for $100, and it was not in good condition, but it was a very cool book. And again, this would probably be something that somebody would want the illustrations more than the content itself. But it was a really cool find, and I was more than happy to pluck that out of the bins and sell it for $100. And then the last one we have was this Pre-Hospital Emergency Care 11th edition, sold also for $100. Yay! Oh, I felt like Kermit doing that. All right, so there we go. So that was my sales. That was 30 sales. So Nada Books, we had 8 Nada Books for $150.47. Came out to $18.81, which, let me check. Yeah, that was the goal. I was aiming for $18.81. Thought a good, post-Civil War kind of number there would be good. And it's what I landed on, and that's what I hit, $18.81. Now, my books, I sold 22 books for $648.50, $29.48 average, well above the completely made up and arbitrary figure of $25 that I consider to be a good sales period. So that was nice. March was a pretty good month. We had 2 books that sold for $100, a $90 book. What more could you want? I'll show you. So this I just picked up last week. Just a few days ago, in fact. And it could possibly be the most valuable book I've ever found. Goodwill bins, sitting there amongst all the rubble. It'd been picked over, you know. I'd probably picked over myself and passed by it. Rather unassuming, don't you think? Would you think this would be particularly valuable? Well, that's why you look them up. No barcode, so a lot of people passed by it. A poem by Saint J. Pierce, Anabasis, translated by T.S. Eliot. So, has anyone ever heard of J. Peirce? I hadn't. Ever heard of the poem Anabasis? I hadn't. But I've heard of T.S. Eliot. So, I do a little look inside, you know. A little open the book kind of game here. Yeah, that's signed by T.S. Eliot. So is it really signed, or is it just a facsimile? Is it just, you know, sometimes you can get tricked by those. But right above the signature, it says, "This signed edition, printed on English handmade paper, is limited to 350 numbered copies. This copy is number," and here's where it gets a little funny. It's number out of series. So, what does that mean? It's out of series. Well, luckily for me, there's a little note written on the inside of the front cover. And the note reads, "Unnumbered copy, signed, being the publisher's Sir Geoffrey Faber copy, purchased from Lady Faber, April 1977. So according to the note, this was the publisher's personal copy, signed by T.S. Eliot. And to make it, so I started doing some research. And Faber and Faber was a publishing company. T.S. Eliot worked for Faber and Faber right when they first started. He was one of their first published authors. They specialized in poetry. T.S. Eliot brought in a lot of poets to this publishing house to print. T.S. Eliot was actually the godfather of Geoffrey Faber's children. So very likely that T.S. Eliot personally said, "Hey, Jeff, this was for you." To which Jeff would have said, "Thank you very much, T.S." and put it on his shelf. So there, I think Terapeak had one of these that sold in the past, because it wasn't on. There weren't any on the app, but it went online. One sold for well over $300. There's one of these on eBooks, a numbered copy, that they have for $985 or so. I want to know, though, with this provenance of this has, and it being a you know, the publisher's personal copy, does that add to the value? Or does the fact that it's not numbered detract from the value? I don't know. If you have any thoughts on it, I would really appreciate you giving me some insight. I'm thinking it's going to be at least, I don't know. I just don't know. You know, I'm thinking like $600-700. I know eBooks is often way out of price, way out of line with what is selling on eBay. But when I just T.S. Eliot signed books in general, are usually around $500-700 at times. Just depends. So I would love your insight on what you think. What I did, the only thing I've done so far is I joined a Facebook group on rare books, and I submitted a query there. It hasn't been approved yet, so I haven't gotten a response yet. And then Sotheby's, the auction house online, has a free appraisal thing where you can send in information and get a free appraisal from them. So I've done that, and they said that will take a few weeks to hear back from them. So, you know, you never know what you're going to find. Even if it's $300, still 50 cents in the Goodwill bins for that. So that's it for now. I'm going to switch hats and then do the rest of the month. And we'll be putting these out, not exactly back to back, but pretty close to it. And that's it for today. So I hope that you guys are selling the heck out of a bunch of stuff. And I will see you sooner rather than later. Adios.